one of the biggest pain points for the University of Oklahoma this year in Brent Venables has been the offensive line. It has not been good. You have allowed 19 sacks in 2 games. And if you're a Sooner fan like me, like, you are frustrated. Like, you hurt over this. Like, this is not the standard of what we expect from this offensive line in Oklahoma. And it's just been abysmal to watch. I think this year you're like at 39 sacks on the season. Like, you're on pace to have some of the most sacks in like all time for college football in one season. Like, it's bad. And, I think the point is now Brent Venables, I think, is going to have to make an uncomfortable decision here, right? Do you let your offensive line coach go when you hire a new offensive coordinator? Because likely when you bring in a new offensive coordinator, he's probably going to want to bring in his own guys. And an offensive line coach might be in that mix. Before we entertain this conversation, though, I want to preface this. If you think Bill Bedenbaugh needs to go, I want you to jump in the comments and drop a name that you think Oklahoma can go out there and get to replace Bill Bedenbaugh. Because it ain't going to be that easy. And there's 120 different college football teams that would take Bill Bedenbaugh as their offensive line coach today, mainly because this dude's a developer. He might not be the best recruiter in the world, but he's a developer. And we got to start talking about how the offensive line got to where it's at today, why it is so bad. And one of the things you have to really point out is recruiting and what it was like in the Lincoln Riley era for recruiting. Like, I think a lot of people miss, although Lincoln Riley was good at recruiting the quarterbacks and getting wide receivers and running backs to want to come in and be a part of the offense. When Lincoln Riley was here, it really felt like the decision-making on bringing guys in through the recruiting trail on the offensive line suffered. Either they were small classes or they were guys that simply didn't pan out. I went and looked at starting in 2020 because this would really be like the last week. We'd have those guys would be seniors, then you'd have 2021. But I started looking at 2020 and I was like, okay, well, what does that class look like? And it was a pretty decent class all in all when you look at it. Remember, that was the class where we had Andrew Raym. Andrew Raym last year just left to go to the NFL. Maybe if he stays this year, the offensive line's a little better. But Nate Anderson, he's not here anymore. I believe he's out at SMU. Anton Harrison, he left early to go to the NFL. Aaron Parks, he's not here anymore. And then you've got Noah Nelson. He's definitely not here. So all those guys, like, they're not here. They're not a part of this class anymore. So then you looked at 2021. This was the year you got Lincoln Riley. You would expect, or not Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams. You would expect that maybe you recruit the offensive line a little better there to protect him. But, I mean, in all, that was a pretty small class. Savion Byrd, he's not here anymore. And then you look at Colin Montgomery. Those are the only two. Now, you did go to the portal and you got Wandy Morris, but he's in the league now. And you got Robert Congle, but he's not here either. So you look at it and say, okay, that's another year where you really missed in the recruiting trail because none of those guys are here. So what about 2022? This is the year where it kind of panned out for you. But again, it was a smaller class. You got Jacob Sexton and Jake Taylor. And I think those two are your foundation points at the tackle. They're very good. Sexton just had a bad year with having to switch from guard to tackle, back to guard, and then back to tackle. Like, it's just, he's not going to be able to be successful in that kind of situation. And then Jake Taylor, like, he's been banged up. It's as simple as that. Like, he has not been able to get healthy this season, and injuries have kind of been a huge problem for Oklahoma this offseason or this season on the offensive line. So you look at that, and then finally you get here to 2024 and 2025 where you have these big offensive line classes. But even in 2023, you take Josh Bates at center, you get Logan Howland. He's a project, so you probably would have liked to see them take another guy there just because, you wanted somebody that maybe would have been more of a bona fide starter for you. And then you go out there and you get a Hito Zaida he's played, but, again, not making a huge impact as of right now. And then Caden Green, who's now at Missouri. So again, kind of a smaller class, probably should have taken 5 or 6 dudes there, but, he's kind of made it up. In 2024 and 2025, the class has been a little bit bigger. The problem is those 2024 guys being freshmen, it's hard for them to make an impact for you right now. I think a lot of people want to say, oh, well, it can't get any worse, but I promise you in the SEC it can. You put out these freshmen, if they're not ready, they don't understand the plays, They're not big enough. They're going to get beat even worse by these defensive linemen in the SEC. So, yeah, I mean, I do agree that it can get worse, and I don't agree that it can't. The problem is I do think we are at the point in time where it has to be a youth movement, right? I think you do have to start playing some of the younger guys, and I think you shift focus now with Sexton potentially being out for the rest of the year because that injury didn't look good. I think you look at a guy like Isaiah Autry and say, okay, you load up Tarquin on the left side, put Isaiah Autry on the left side. I think he's like 6'7", 320 now, like an absolute monster of a human being, might even be 6'8". And then you look at the guard position. Do you play a Eugene Brooks or an EPL there? Both of those dudes are big. They're athletic. I think a lot of people forget some of these dudes were summer enrollees. So, they might not understand the playbook yet. Their bodies might not be ready. But regardless, when you look at it, it might be time for Oklahoma to shift to that youth movement and prepare for next season. Like, that might be where we're at. Although, at times, it's probably not going to be any better and it's not going to look pretty. But then this also comes down to this. With you needing to replace your offensive coordinator this year, whatever offensive coordinator you bring in, they're likely going to want to bring in their own guys. And if you want to keep a Bill Bedenbaugh and an Emmett Jones on the staff, right, you're going to have to pay the offensive coordinator off to not want to go out there and get their own guys. So at this point in time, I don't think you want to let EJ go. He's a really good recruiter. He's just had a bad string this year with 5 of his, best wide receivers being out. I think you really want to give him more time. He has strong connections in the Dallas area, and that's not anything you want to lose. But with Bill Bedenbaugh, I think this is the interesting part, right? Do you let another offensive coordinator replace him? Or do you try to go have that uncomfortable conversation with Bill Bedenbaugh and say, hey, man, like, I think we need to move you down to an offensive analyst role. Like, you're obviously going to take a pay cut, but it's a little bit easier on you. You're definitely getting older. You can retire whenever you want. It might not hurt our recruiting classes at that point. We're going to bring in a younger offensive lineman. Obviously, as an analyst, you can still work with some of these guys as well and help develop them. But we think like this is the best thing for Oklahoma football and probably the best thing for you as well. And if Bill Bedenbaugh is willing to accept that, I think that's your best scenario. But looking at, a guy, who you could bring in, again, a Brad Davis would be like a home run hire at offensive line. A lot of OU fans are going to look at Phil Loadholt, but it's hard to imagine you're going to go out there and find another offensive line coach that is going to be able to come in next year, look at the situation, and turn it around overnight. I just don't think that can happen. Bill Bedenbaugh is really good. I just don't think, replacing him at this moment is the right answer. But Brent Venables, like, he's got some uncomfortable decisions to make this offseason. And if you're an Oklahoma fan, like, I get it. You're screaming. You're asking, why hasn't he been fired yet? Like, why hasn't there been a change? This is not the standard. 19 sacks. Like, your quarterback's never going to gain any confidence. You're never going to be able to move the ball. I get it. I understand where everybody's frustrations are at. Like, Bill Bedenbaugh's done really well in the portal. He missed on a lot this year. Hickman's been really hurt. Tarquin hasn't been the starter we thought he could be. Spencer Brown, you thought you were getting Geno Vandermark, and you ended up with Spencer Brown, and he hasn't been good. Like, obviously, this year is a lot of it's on Bill Bedenbaugh. Maybe he needs another year. I don't know. But regardless, this offensive line, it's been a problem for Oklahoma, and you've got to address these issues now. I don't know what the answer is, but that's where I'd like to hear from you guys. So jump in the comments below, join the discussion. Let me know your guys' thoughts. And if you guys have not already, make sure you guys go ahead and hit that like and you hit that subscribe button.